Question. The ASU Morrison Institute has documented the serious long-term social and economic impact of failing to graduate Latino youth in Arizona. What can you do as a federal official to help curb the problem? I believe we begin with Mr. Gallego.
Yes, thank you. One thing I think we should do is reinvest in our youth, and that's something that we haven't actually been doing. I unfortunately came from a poor family. I was on the free lunch program, and I had a lot of teachers that really truly cared about me, and my mother who really got on me to study. And I was very lucky in that manner. For us, as a federal program, what we should do, we should invest in our Title I schools where many of our young Latinos and African American students are going, and we should invest to actually keep them in school year-round. Studies show if you keep young and poor kids in school longer, their grade scores will rise and crime will, juvenile crime will fall. If you do that, and specifically targeting your Title I schools, you're going to be able to actually see great opportunities for a lot of young men and young women to keep up with the pace of education. Because a lot of times what happens is that when the summer comes, a lot of these parents are just too busy to take care of their kids, or they don't have the money to put them in any form of enrichment program to keep them engaged and up to date with education standards during the summer. If we can do that through our Title I programs, funding Title I schools, to keep the kids in year-round or with a shortened summer vacation, well, you'll see that kids scoring on scores would go higher, and I think that we would eventually see a long-term effect of higher graduation rates because they would actually see that they have a future.
Jared Maupin.
The time to educate our young people is not in high school. It's when they're toddlers. It's when they're in preschool, pre-K. It's incumbent upon your congressman, and in Congress I will do this for you, to appropriate the funds necessary to pay for Head Start programs. Head Start programs help children with nutrition. They help them with the fundamental building blocks of that initial education that prepares them for our public schools. We need all-day kindergarten. Many of our children belong to single parents or the working class parents that are not at home during the day, and they could use that help in bringing up their children in a safe and educational environment. We also need to fund our public schools. I have a pin here on my lapel. I've served the Phoenix Union High School District. I know what it takes to educate our children. It takes money. It takes good teachers. It takes investing in the structures that we have in place. But instead, what we've seen in Arizona's 7th Congressional District is a rash of charter schools that have popped up all over the district. And really, they've done a great disservice to our public schools and those institutions. We need to fund public schools, support our teachers, and provide the fundamentals in primary education so that our children are not behind before graduation time arrives. That's going to be necessary if we're going to rebuild our middle class and have stronger generations that are able to improve their own quality of life in the district as a whole.
Mr. Peñalosa.
Thank you very much. I've read that report. It's called DROP, and I studied that report when I was a Flynn Brown fellow, Flynn Brown Civic Leadership Academy, approximately 2 years ago. And the fundamental premise of that report is that in 2002, the state was advised of the consequences and the changing demographics in the state of Arizona as it applies to the Latino population. And yet our legislature did not heed the advice of that report. And what was the advice from that report? Number one is that we have excellent educators who are involved with their kids. And the perfect example of that can no better be seen at Carl Hayden High School. The success of Carl Hayden High School, the STEM program there, the robotics program, and the fearless leadership of Dr. Cameron and Freddie Lavarge and the students and the robotics team, it came to fruition, and we just saw the success with that with Underwater Dreams. And there are success stories, and they did that by fearless leadership and kids committed to education despite the odds. The second thing the report indicates is that we must have mandatory from the federal side a heavy initiative in the state of Arizona to start with preschool from age 3 and work up and full time, because only 34% of the kids in this state go to preschool. Imagine that. And those are the initiatives that the state of Arizona has not adopted, and the folks here in government have not taken those initiatives. So at the federal level, as your congressman, being involved in education, having gone through community college, UCLA, and law school, and having put my children through school, I know what it is as a parent, and also as a student, and also as an encourager to facilitate success in our community.
Maria Rose Wilcox.
I believe early education is a must. I have had the honor of being on the Head Start board at the county for 20 years. And every time we brought more money in and added new students, the stats went up and up in the schools they were going to. We must invest in our children at a very, very early age. Janet Napolitano, when she was governor, put all-day kindergarten into effect. What happened when she left? The legislature turned it down and did not fund it. This is a step backwards. President Obama has embarked on an education policy where he is going to put forth a plan where early education is front of the burner on any kind of education funding. We must also include families in this early education. In Head Start, when parents come in and they learn what their children are learning, and they also participate in their child's education, they do not become afraid of it, they become advocates for it. So this is what we need to do. We need to expand Head Start. With all of the good Head Start does in the city of Phoenix and Maricopa County, we only can sign up close to 7,500 children. That's a drop in the bucket. We must increase that and make it culturally sensitive. We also must work with our community colleges to make sure that they are working with our high schools. High schools are working with grammar schools, and there are incentives for children to move up the ladder of success.
Randy Camacho.
Being a high school teacher for over 20 years, the one thing that has really amazed me about many of the students that I've taught is their resiliency, despite the conditions that they come from. In many instances, the students are the parents, and they're watching over their siblings, and it's just an amazing thing to see. But what's even more amazing is how they do well in school also. One day, I conducted a lesson in my class asking them just a simple question: what makes resilient students? And the one thing that they came up with as a class was that they have something forward to look to, something to look to in the future. And that is very interesting because that mirrored the exact study about resilient children. The other thing we must focus on is ensuring that our kids are reading on the third grade level by third grade. So many studies have shown that if they are reading at the third grade level by third grade, that they will be successful students along the way. And that is something that we need to invest in. And the Head Start programs is a good example of something that could also work. We also need, as far as the future goes, we have programs like Aguila and the American Dream Academy that works with families to prepare them for college, to teach them how to apply for scholarships and financial aid. These things need to expand so that students have access to these programs.